Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. I know that I start a lot of episodes off thanking you all. I think gratitude's an important thing. But last episode, we had the highest number per day of any episode we've ever done, and the number's unbelievable. And so I want to just thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you for sharing it. We had some doctors who were like, we just pass it back to each other, and we learn from it, and we talk through it. Like one of the things I tell you to do. So, thank you all for your support and for listening to this podcast. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Matthew, what in the world are we going to talk about today?
Boom. So, as you guys know by now, I get a lot of questions that come in through Tower Leadership. And the other day, I was talking to a gentleman, and he was kind of taken back by like my assumption about his practice, And I told him, well, maybe you're looking at this wrong, because what the marketplace is telling doctors to do right now is, grow, 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 grow. And I actually told him, I don't know necessarily if that's the best thing. And I've heard you tell a lot of our clients that as well. So my question to you is, why is growing sometimes the wrong thing for a practice to do?
And literally everyone just turned off the podcast.
Everyone was like, no.
So great question. It's a little bit, you're going to hang with me because it's kind of an almost MBA type even thought process. Mm-hmm. And interesting, like I love to grow businesses. I mean, in fact, like I wrote down here earlier, someone was like, what do you do? I was like, I make businesses grow. Like that's what I do. Mm-hmm. And so interesting when I think about that. I was thinking about this morning, like how many doctors within Tower Leadership have went from like 3 to 10 million within 12 months. People that have went from, that are one location to 4 locations. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, it's just mind boggling how quickly we can move the needle.
Yep.
So I say that like, to say like, yeah, I can show you how to move the needle. I mean, if you do work, why would we not want to do that though? I mean, well, you get what you measure, right? You've guys, anyone who's listened to the podcast has heard me say that.
Trademark.
You get what you measure. So why are you growing, right? So there's a purpose behind growing. There's got to be inevitably a reason you're growing. Now, marketers love the word grow. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is because marketing, it appeals, this idea of growing appeals to this place in our brain that says growth equals success.
Yeah, freedom.
Right, ultimately freedom, right? Mm-hmm. Success means freedom of time and money. So when we look at this, we say, well, he can show me how to grow. This marketing company can show me how to grow. And so then what ends up happening is that, we finally get to a place where there's never going to be a place where it financially makes sense not to grow.
Yep.
Why not take on another location? Mm-hmm. Add another doctor, add another location, add another location. Why not do that? Because you have to know why you're in this for. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know this, but back in 2000, I think it was 11, Krispy Kreme donuts filed for bankruptcy. And the reason why is they grew too fast. New CEO comes in, grow. So what happens is growth strategy takes a tremendous amount of capital. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're growing like that, it's one of the reasons why DSOs don't tend to buy a lot of real estate is because that real estate would eat up that capital. And the real estate isn't going to yield what a practice can.
What they need. Now,
I'm not saying don't buy real estate. I'm just telling you fundamentally why a lot of corporate type DSOs do not buy real estate.
Yeah.
Because there's a limited amount of capital. And capital is a limit to how fast you can grow. But it's also a limit to how fast you can do other things. Like maybe shore up your systems, your operations. Yep. Maybe it's paying off your home.
Yeah.
Maybe it's,
putting the systems in place.
I think ultimately it's like, why are you doing all this?
Yeah.
And so, for instance, yesterday I was talking to a doctor and we're going to pay off, I love paying off debt. Like it's fun to me. Like I love it. We're going to pay off her home mortgage within a matter of years. Okay. When I say this, I'm talking about a gigantic mortgage in 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. So, we could argue that it always makes sense to put that money back into the business and it'll grow and the return's higher. But see, I do know what it looks like when that doctor wakes up and she has no mortgage and she has no business. She might carry business debt, but the strategic debt is aligned with the business and the growth of the business. But when she wakes up and she has no personal debt,
she'll feel amazing.
Amazing. And I've never there's always, and I explained this, by the way, to this doctor. I said, look, there's never going to be a justification to not invest the money versus paying off debt. It's never going to financially make sense to pay off debt. It just doesn't, unless your interest rates are 16%, which they haven't been in since the 1980s. It's not going to make sense because your return, and especially in a dental practice, is going to be so much higher. But with every decision, there's an emotional and there's a financial component. And we got to look at the fact of there's an emotional side to this, but it turns into wealth. Okay. Because what I said to this doctor, I said, look, once we pay off the home and we're going to free up, let's call it $14,000 a month. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say we free up $14,000 a month. We put that on top of a building. Yeah. And that frees up, right? By the way, this practice is still growing. It's just that we've put some money towards debt reduction. So then what ends up happening is, now all of a sudden this doctor wakes up, and I actually took an Excel spreadsheet and we kind of budgeted out what it would look like in a decade, right, with all this stuff paid off. And the thing was, I think it came to the tune of let's just call it for the sake of this podcast, $130,000 a month of income with zero personal debt.
Good feeling.
I mean, this is called dental wealth, right? I mean, last I checked, this is a dental wealth podcast. What do you feel like when you have a 6-figure a month income and zero debt? Now, I'm not talking about practice debt. I'm talking about personal debt, okay? Because ultimately speaking, this doctor makes, will be able to make the money that they want, right? They'll ultimately be able to do whatever they want. Hell, matter of fact, one of the conversations I had is we got to start talking about legacy planning now. We got to start talking about tax issues now because you're going to have a tax problem. Now,
well, that was the number one thing she wanted too, is pay off her home. It wasn't a practice. I mean, you got to motivation is an understatement when it comes to getting things done. And her biggest motivation was, if I could pay off my house as quickly as possible, then I'll be able to go do the things. So the fact that she was able to do that motivated her to go back to her business and say, all right, now what can we do?
The business, let's keep this in mind. The business is an asset utilized to create the quality of life that we want. The business is just a damn asset. Yes, it's an asset. This is one of the why they say in business, don't fall in love with your product.
Yeah.
Look, that's the thing about being a dentist is the problem with being a dentist is it creates an identity. And what I mean by that is for instance, if I started a flooring company, I'm probably not going to consider myself a floorer. I don't
Master
know.
floorer. Yeah.
I don't think that's a word. But I think what ends up happening is there's an identity with being a doctor, right? It's it's very established. It's very buttoned up, right? And there's a lot of pride within that. And so we see our business a little bit different when you're a doctor. And by the way, I want to give doctors credit. I think there's some ways you should see a business differently when you're a doctor, because it is you're providing a professional service that is extremely important. However, with that said, we have to still say this is an asset utilized to create the quality of life we want, so that we can have the impact and time and money we want to be able to do the things we want to be able to do. So therefore, if that's the case, then what ends up happening is you say, this ego thing will kick in. And it's I want 3 practices, I want 4 practices, I want 5 practices, I want 12 practices, I want 40 practices. And by the way, that's all fine, but it's to what ends? What's the goal? Well, because I want more money. How much money? As much as I can get. Yeah. Why? I don't know. Because I want to be able to go to a dental convention and tell my friends I have 12 practices. I want to be able to put that in whatever. And it's
put a plaque on the wall.
I love the idea. By the way, I love growing businesses.
Yeah.
It's a passion of mine. I love growing businesses. I love to see a business hit its potential. But we don't sacrifice our personal goals. We don't sacrifice our family. We don't sacrifice our quality of time. We don't sacrifice those things. And so for me, it's like when I go back and look at now, we could simply give you the business answer. Well, sometimes you have to improve your.
Well, I mean, I think the Krispy Kreme example. I don't know if you finished it or not. That's spot on. Like if you take away anything from why you shouldn't grow, it's the Krispy Kreme story is a great case study to look at. And I don't think you finished the outcome of it. So for the listeners, tell them what happened when they decided to go international.
Well, they decided to go to international. I don't know why people don't love hot donuts everywhere. I don't know.
The French were not happy.
They were not. They were surprised at really what the results was, because what ends up happening with a major corporation like that is anytime you bring in a new CEO, they've got a new idea. Like they've got to change whatever was happening so they can say how great they are and how much shareholder value they're providing. What happens is in a business, believe it or not, in a dental practice, the same thing will happen. What happened was they ran out of capital. They didn't know what the results were, right? They went into an unexpected territory. They didn't know what the results would be. When the results were crappy, then they didn't have the capital to be able to get through it. Now they filed protection. But the same thing happens with a dental practice. Go back to look at COVID.
Yeah.
So, let's look at COVID again and say, the problem with so many people, they were expanding at a time when they should have been putting aside capital. One of the things I said was put aside capital. I've been telling my clients for years, winter's coming. I've said on this podcast, I mean, you can go back and listen to the episodes. Before COVID, literally, I'm on this podcast. It is saying that. It's documented, me saying, go put freaking capital aside. Quit being an egomaniac and go make sure you have enough capital. Capital. I mean, what happens is we think the good times will last forever. So what ends up happening is sometimes you need to slow down and accumulate capital. I had a dental practice come to me one time. He had $7 million worth of debt on his business, and it was doing $8 million. What the hell are you doing? Yeah. Like,
somebody told him that growing was the best thing to do, and they didn't look at that other side of it.
It was ego.
Yeah,
I'd argue it's ego. And so, and by the way, sometimes it's about getting profitable. Was it not too long ago I heard like growing for the sake of growing is an ego trip, right? Growing without profitability is an ego trip, right? Your company has to become profitable at some point. So sometimes you need to slow down and get your profitability, get your margins where your margins need to be. So there's a lot of reasons why we might slow down the growth. You get what you measure. Maybe it's time to measure a little bit of profitability, right? Maybe you need some profitability. Maybe you're over leveraged and you need to reduce debt. People don't understand that banks look at you. They look at your personal balance sheet. That's right, your personal balance sheet, and see how much debt you've got. They look at your the way you manage capital within a business. You're like, well, they kept giving me loans. Yeah, but if you've got like enough capital to just make payroll. Yeah. And then you have a bunch of personal debt. Hell, I wouldn't lend you anything. I mean, and so I think what ends up happening is people don't realize there's a narrative too. And when you start growing and growing and growing, and then you're like, well, the bank won't give me any money. The bank won't give me any money because you don't know how to manage money. Yeah, it's very obvious. And so sometimes this idea of growing, it's like I can show you how to grow to $10 million really quickly. And do it right. Yes, there's a way to do it right, and there's a way to do it really wrong. There's a way to go to 100 million right, and there's a way to go to 100 million really wrong. And it's really knowing that look, it isn't always about measuring growth. Yeah. I love people, like I get phone calls, I feel like once a week now, Matthew.
All the time.
Asking me to go help them roll up dental offices. Or it's like once a week.
Dude, come on, please stop. It was even marketers. I mean, we always joke and laugh on LinkedIn. We get probably 3 messages a day, and they're like, hey, I see your position title. I can help you grow your clientele. I don't know anything about your business. I don't know if the infrastructure is in place for you to bring on those clienteles, but hey, I've got a solution for you.
I guarantee if I looked at half those marketers, their balance sheet is like zero assets. Like they read a book on LinkedIn or something, marketing, and now they're a marketing expert.
And I see that in the dental world.
Ambition's good. But I want to keep focused on this whole idea. So like, what are you trying to measure? If ultimately the goal is to get, and this is why I say measure passive income, don't measure accumulation. Because if you measure passive income, you'll get passive income. Look, I can show you how to get, if you need $20,000 a month of passive income, that's really not that hard to do if that's your focus. But what ends up happening is we make income a focus, not passive income. Like so active income versus passive income. We utilize growth, not profitability. what we do is we measure the wrong thing. And because we start measuring the wrong things, we lose decades. And I literally mean decades. The reason why dentists take 30 years to break $1 million sometimes is because they were measuring income and not assets or passive income. They were measuring the wrong damn thing. Hell, if I would just looked at valuation, be like, dude, 30 years and you broke 7 figures after 30 years, you're measuring this thing wrong. You're measuring the wrong thing. You were listening to financial advisors. I'm sorry, but they just cost you a whole bunch of money. When we look at this thing, we have to say, look, why are you trying to grow? Now, if your ultimate goal is time and money, you might just be chasing the horizon. Like, I can give you time and money now. Like, so for instance, if all of a sudden you could not grow anymore, but I could give you, so let's just play out the scenario. Let's just say your business is doing $2.5 million. And then there's 2 doctors, and let's just say 3 doctors, 2 of them are you. And then you were able to place yourself, okay? And then let's just say in that scenario, you pull yourself completely out of clinical dentistry. We're able to replace your income. We'll grow the practice to basically replace your active income. And then ultimately speaking, if you wake up and this practice is yielding you a strong income, you're not having to work. So let's just say that you're managing the leadership team, you're working as a CEO, your patients are taken care of, come and go as you want. You have all the time that you want. You have all the money you want because that provides enough income for your lifestyle. And you have no personal debt. Let's just say you don't have any home, no car, nothing.
This sounds great.
Say you just then like life is great. And so when it's a habit, you'll spend 2-3 decades chasing after growth, and it's like, stop. Let me show you how to actually get now. Here's what I know will be true, Matthew. Once I get you to the place where you got 3 other doctors working and you're not having to work clinically and you have no debt and you start having a bunch of extra money. Man, what a great time to grow. You're going to be like, okay, what do I do with all this time and money?
Exactly.
That's what I always say, when there's a void, something fills the void. So all of a sudden you go, Eric, I'm bored. I'm bored. I got more money I know what to do with. I got more time what I know what to do with. And I'm bored. Great. That's when amazing things happen. That's when so many amazing things. We'll, by the way, what will happen is we'll impact a whole bunch of people. We'll buy a bunch of businesses. We'll continue to expand and grow. And so then all of a sudden that person wakes up and they're like, I just keep getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier and impacting more and more people, and I get more and more of my time back. So
and that's why a lot of times we'll run into doctors that are like, I hired this consultant and they grew me this, but I had twice as many headaches. I had the team started not enjoying work and things like that, and we're like, well, that's because somebody was telling you grow was the solution, instead of all right, how do we build this thing out correctly? And that inevitably by doing that, guess what? You're going to grow.
My argument's always been like for the consultants and the market people are like, we're going to teach them to grow. We're going to teach them to grow. To what ends? You hand it to a financial advisor? I don't think so. Like, no. To what ends? Like, why are we growing? Because no one teaches you what to do with the money afterwards. Even if you grow, where do you put the capital? Where do you effectively put the capital? Where do you know where to put the capital? Hell, if I'll show you where to put the capital, then you'll get really rich, right? That's why I don't love putting it in the stock market. Now, ultimately, some portion should be in the market, but the whole thing is like, where do we put capital? Where do we put capital? Where do we know where to put capital? And so what ends up happening is when we look at a business growing, I'm great with businesses growing. So back to your original question, I love to grow businesses. I love it. But when we do it the right way. We do look at profitability. We do look what our goals are. We look at our long-term net worth goals. We look at our income goals. We look at our passive income goals. We look at the quality of life we want to have, and we say, can I utilize my current practice to get me there? No, I can't. Okay, great. Let's grow then. Okay, great. So let me give you an example when you would grow to grow. Let me tell you why you would grow. Let's assume we could run a 30% profit margin. And you said to me, what I need is $300,000. If I was able to get $300,000, let's just say net of taxes, you got $200,000. We might say, let's grow $1 million over the next 12 months. And by growing $1 million in the next 12 months, I should yield somewhere around 200 grand. Let's assume that we put 50,000 of that back into overall reinvestment. Okay, I have $150. Okay, let's put the $150 on your mortgage, or let's put the $150 into accumulation, or let's put the $150 into personal development, or let's put the $150 where else. And so now we grow, but we grow specifically with a goal. Or it might be that you're saving up for the down payment for a building, or whatever it ends up being, right? So we know what the capital investments are, and then we get aligned around those capital investments, and then we grow. We don't do it for ego trip. Yeah. We don't grow because we think it's cool to go back and tell other people we have multiple locations. We say, in my current location, I can only do 2.5 million. I'm maxed out on capacity. I've expanded my hours. I've done everything I need
Can't
to.
work
The
anymore.
average revenue is high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get another location. That location will give me increased capacity. As I get increased capacity, I believe that I can take this practice from 700 to 1.6 within 12 months. The additional yield will give me X. This will be the end up result. Then I'll take that capital, I'll reinvest it here, and it will help me get what I want. See, that's when you grow a practice. Yeah. Or when you end up saying, so like we're strategic around it, but sometimes the goal might be, like if I look at somebody who just says, I want to grow, but I'm like, so tell me about life. They're like, I'm stressed out. We have no profit. My team's miserable. Go back to, sometimes consulting companies love to come in and then do what I call flash in the pan strategies. And the flash in the pan strategies get revenues to go up because that's what you're measuring. But then ultimately people quit. They don't stay long term. They're not bought in. And then when that happens, then ultimately speaking, do you have what you want? You're like, hell no, because you have to go back and fix all the problems and hire new people, and you got stress, and then revenues drop. And so it's like, well, if you had just focused on what you needed anyhow, which was having a practice that runs by itself, then you wouldn't have had these issues. So I think it's important, even when you're looking at consulting companies, like, what's their philosophy?
Yeah. Are they going to show you what to do with it when you grow? Oftentimes I would say no. I mean, when you look at the dental marketplace, it's all because we live in it and we get the advertisements too. It's always grow, and then, but you always ask to what means, like, what's the purpose of it? If you don't have a purpose, and oftentimes that's the driving force to get you to grow, to do the things that you not necessarily want to do for a short period of time to get a long-term game. No one ever breaks that down in the dental industry, and the thousands of phone calls I've had at this point, people always say, I've had a consultant in the past and, they grew, but then it was a headache and I didn't know what to do with it. And then we're back to the same spot. It's because they didn't know why they were doing it.
So let's try this conversation set. Matthew.
Yes.
I'm going to grow your practice today from 1.5 million to 7.5 million over the next 36 months. When we do that, what it's going to allow us to do is going to allow us to have the economies of scale to allow us to market to the market we need to. We're also going to have enough profitability, the EBITDA coming off of that. What we'll be able to do is you're going to wake up in that same time period. You'll have no mortgage. So I'm going to show you how much we're going to put on your home mortgage. We're going to pay off your student loan. So you're going to wake up with zero debt. We're going to put an executive and management team in place so the practice runs without you. And so now you're going to wake up. You're going to have a tremendous amount of income. You're going to have the practice that really, truly runs itself. You're not going to have to be in the dental chair, and you'll have absolutely no personal debt.
That sounds great to me.
So that's why we would go to 7.5 million, right? Because you go to 7.5 million because you go, hey, let's go to 7.5 million so that I would have no debt, so that I will be able to put the team in, so I'll be able to have economies of scale, so I'll be able to have the quality of life I want. Then ultimately you might get 7.5 and go, look, I got no debt. I've got a great leadership team. Everything's in place. Great. Now let's go to the next thing. I remember, and I've said it on this podcast before, but it goes back down to an argument one time that Mr. Wonderful and Mark Cuban, you've heard me say this one example before, but it was an example that Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful on the Shark Tank were having an argument. And Mr. Wonderful looks over at Mark Cuban and he says, man, you don't even know what the hell you're doing. He goes, what do you mean I don't know what I'm doing? He goes, man, if I had bought that business, because I guess they both bid on this business. Yeah. He'd be at 25 million today. And Mark Cuban looked at him and said, he works 3 days a week. Yeah. He has a $5 million business with a $2.5 million profit margin. He's good. Right?
I think he's all right.
And it's true. It's like he's got $2.5 million working 3 days a week. That's not a bad life. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Which is easily doable in a dental practice.
Right. And so Mr. Wonderful was like, look, why don't you just grow? And he's like, because that's not what he wanted or needed. No. So the answer in anyone's specific situation, I would have to sit down with somebody specifically, or and then go through their entire financial picture, both personally and professionally, and then look at what their practice is doing, look at what the potential is, look at what our opportunities are, find out what they want, find out what their spouse wants. Those are all the things that like come into play before we actually start saying grow, 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 grow. Grow is a keyword.
Yeah.
Utilized by marketing to sell you on a pipe dream. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be happier. And by the way, if you hand all your money to your financial advisor anyhow, they're going to say, don't pay off your home. Put it in the stock market. I've never had somebody ever wake up to me, like ever come to me and go, well, I know I'm strapped with debt, but man, my 401k looks great. I've got, someday I'll really be happy.
Yeah.
Hell no. They wish they could pay off all that. Because I've asked people this question, by the way. I'm like, okay, so you have $1 million in your 401k and you have $1 million home loan.
Yeah.
Like, how does that 401k money make you feel? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you had zero debt, how would you feel? They're like, oh my God, I'd feel so good. Exactly. So it's understand there's an emotional part to every financial decision. And so when we look at growing a business, we grow a business strategically. We do it for a purpose. And we do it mainly for the purpose of creating capital so that we can take that capital and either reduce debt or reinvest. I'm going to say that again because I want anyone listening to hear me on this. We grow a business to create capital. By the way, then you have to have profit margin so you can have capital, okay?
Number one rule of business is have cash.
That's why growth without profitability is an ego trip, because if you're growing but there's no money left over, then it's an ego trip.
Yeah.
We grow a company. How about I'll actually make this one step. We grow a company profitably.
Yes.
Profitably. We grow a company profitably. So we have capital. So we utilize that capital to either reinvest back into our business or reduce debt. That's why we grow a business. Sometimes when we're looking at our business, we don't need to grow to be able to do that.
Yep.
We might need to refine. We might need to get control of our expenses. We might need to get our operations together so that we're suited for the future. We might want to just take the current capital and pay off debt. We also only have so much mental energy, and sometimes we all need to frickin' breathe. And so I think there's a lot of components to it. And so don't buy into just grow. I might take somebody and, I mean, how many times, one of the things I always, and you've been there for it. I'm in front of these large audiences. I say, raise your hand if you'd be happy if I doubled your practice in the next 12 months. And they all raise their hand, right?
Yep,
yeah,
always.
Oh my God, yes.
Me.
Raise your hand. And by the way, do this if you're listening to the podcast. Raise your hand right now. If you're driving, keep one hand on the wheel. Raise your hand if you would be happy if I doubled your practice in 12 months. Raise your hand if you didn't grow at all, but you could stop working clinically. Revenues, all your income and revenue stayed the same, but you didn't have to work clinically. Raise your hand.
Boom.
So sometimes it's not about growth, is it? That's the point. The point is sometimes it's not about growth. If I created a business where you didn't have to work clinically, you made the same income that you had today, and you were happy, then maybe that's what the focus should be right now. It's getting a business around you not having to work clinically. Maybe that's the key component, and not just grow. We might ultimately have to grow to get you to that place, but we have to think about what is it that I truly want, and then use the business as a tool to back into that.
And oftentimes there's stuff everywhere too, so they'd be surprised at how quickly we can get them to that point.
That's right. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Always glad to have you here. I just want you to hear this message on this. This is one of those things, like, we get so frustrated when we see just grow, because it's all, look, I try not to use expletives, but I am a prior sailor, so maybe cussing like a sailor I do my best. But it's just bullshit. It's bullshit to get your competitive nature psyched up so that you buy into something that, that helps someone sell their system. Sometimes you should grow. Sometimes you shouldn't. Sometimes you should increase profitability. Sometimes, believe it or not, you should work to decrease by profitability by reinvesting. There's all kinds of things you have to look at from a business owner. It's not that simple. It isn't always about, it's funny, people are like, new patients. There's consulting companies that just tell you go after new patients. Well, what the hell about all the current existing patients that we're letting walk out the door? It costs twice as much, if not 3 times as much, to go get that new patient as it would be to just retain the one you got. So I think we have to look at the right thing, make sure your systems are aligned, make sure all that's in line before you go ahead and do that. So look, go back and look at your own practice. Go back and look at your own goals. If you go into the next year, like what's making you set those goals? Why are you saying that? Like I said, I literally have wrote on my sheet, I make businesses grow. Yeah, I'm really good at making businesses grow, but I want to do it with intention and purpose. Mm-hmm. So go back and look, hey, why am I trying to grow? What's the point of it? How much capital will I yield? Where am I going to put that capital? Am I going to pay off debt? Or am I going to reinvest that capital? If you're looking at that and go, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, then you need to probably reach out because there's a lot of conversations around this. Because here's what I know to be true. If you do this right, you'll get there a lot quicker. And that's the point. It doesn't take 30 years to get there. You can do it in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. If you just focus in on the right things and quit letting people take you down the wrong road. So that's part of creating dental wealth. So Matthew, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Countdown to 100. 7 more.
Where are we at?
93.
This is 93. All right.
We're on the countdown, everybody.
93. Keep listening. Keep watching. We'll see you next time.